Hey guys, it's M4J here and welcome back to Global Ventures here on Planet Coaster. Now this week you might notice a few things have changed. Hopefully, first of all, the video quality should be a lot better than it used to be. I've found a new way of recording time lapses, and I've also found a new way of recording audio as well. So fingers crossed this video is a lot better than the previous episodes. Second thing is this video is mainly going to be a time lapse of me doing some bits and pieces type detailing around the Valley of the Nile section of the park. So for example, this is me building the rest of the station building of Antony and Cleopatra. You'll notice here the building does get slightly close to the well, I'm going to call it the snake pit from now on, and you'll see why in a second. It gets quite close to the snake pit section of Cleopatra. I have done a clearance check. It looked as though it passed, so fingers crossed that it has indeed passed. If it doesn't, then I'll have to go back and change it, but you know, I'll do that off camera, that's fine. So yeah, this episode is very busy of me sort of finishing this building, and then I do a lot of terraforming, and then I also build the gift shop, ASUS Antiquities, that's what I called it, not antiques, which you will exit into at the end of the ride via the elevated walkway. I also put some rock work down, put some trees down to make it look a little bit nicer, although I've used the wrong type of tree, because I used the savanna type trees, the acacias, and I keep going to say baobab, but it's not baobab, it's something else. Basically the savanna type trees, which are not accurate. I don't think Egypt has that type of tree, so I might have to go change that as well. But it was the closest I could get at the time, and it's very easy just to swap them out if necessary. But yeah, usual thing of I'm very happy with the result. It's still not my best work. I still think I'm capable of doing better. But in terms of slow, steady improvement, there is definitely some. The buildings look very, very nice from the inside, and they look really bad from the outside. But considering you're only really supposed to see these buildings from the inside, I think I've done alright considering. I think I've done alright. Hopefully you guys will agree too. We are so close now to being able to post proper POVs of these on Reddit and on YouTube for people to come and watch. These two coasters here, they're basically my pride and joy. They're the ones I'm most proud of and want to show off the most, because it's very rare that you see sort of dueling B&M coasters, particularly in real life. There aren't any. There used to be the Dueling Dragons / Dragon Challenge, but we all know what happened to those. So it's nice to be able to actually recreate that a little bit and have a little bit of a homage towards that. As I said though, it's still not my best work. I still think I am capable of building better themed coasters, and Scarab will be a good example of my attempts at building a better themed coaster in the not too distant future, because that one still needs to be finished off, a little bit polished basically, make it look nice. So yeah, this is just, you know, me placing wall pieces, trying to get these stations looking nice. I was aware of the fact that these floors, both floors in both stations, do rise and drop. So I've had to make sure that the walls here don't get in the way of that. I'm trying to remember what I did. I think I just left it like that. I might do a little bit of terraforming to try and hide that bit a little bit more as well. Again, just to make it look a little bit nicer and a little bit more refined and finished. I also do a little bit of detailing work on the exit to the stations, on the track side of things. So I was a really happy accident that I left a gap in that wall there, because the lift motor for Antony fits in that gap almost perfectly. So that was quite a nice, happy coincidence that that was the case. And you can see I'm just adding some nice trim here as well. I'm getting close to the stage now where I'm happy to just top this off and call it done. I still need to go through and add lighting, which is something I need to do for the whole area, not just these two station buildings. And then after that, yeah, I think it'll pretty much be done and ready to go. You can see me doing lots of saves. I've learnt from mistakes, and the good thing is that they weren't even my mistakes. I've learnt from other people's mistakes, as to you should always save the game as quickly and regularly as possible. Because this game does have a habit sometimes of just dying on you, and you don't want to lose hard work when that happens. This is me placing some flooring down now, because again, just wanted to make the station look a little bit more finished, and these big holes in the floor were not making the station, or any of the ride in fact, look finished. So I've gone through and added these little floor pieces, and that carries right the way over through this section of the coaster as well. I think the central section where the two tracks leave the station and turn towards the lift hills, I think with that I had to lower the floor a little bit to make it fit with the rest of the build. But yeah, again, overall, I think it looks alright. I think it looks quite pretty. I had some trouble here trying to get this wall piece to fit. I think in the end I just duplicate a wall and lower it down slightly. So we've got some weird designs going on inside. And then yeah, here I had some problems as well, just getting things to line up properly. The grid sizes in this game do annoy me slightly. Particularly, I thought these coasters were on the same level, but they're not. There's a little drop between them. And that made things quite tricky when it came to building the station building. And even the queue was offset by like 1 meter, maybe even less, probably more like half a meter. And yeah, that did make things a little bit tricky. So this terrain paint that I'm using here, it's described as rock, but I think a better one for it is sand, because it looks more sandy than rocky to me. And you can see here I'm just going through and terraforming this a little bit more. All the mistakes that I made in the previous track placements basically gets repaired at this stage. That little line there is supposed to denote the edge of the area, but we've kind of encroached upon that now, so don't need to worry too much about that. I'm getting some frame lag on my preview. Hopefully that's not in the final video. And yeah, this whole section here now looks a lot nicer. It's with the terrain paint and the little sort of natural rock work that I've created as well. I've not done any rock work, artificial rock work yet. It's all natural. It's all these little bumps and stuff in the landscape plus the paint. And yeah, it looks quite nice. It does look quite nice. The idea is to make this look a bit like a desert town that's sort of been built upon to create these rocky... Well, it's like a rocky area that's been built upon to create a townscape, basically. And I can have a little bit more freedom here with Cleopatra. I can really make this section very close to the ground. I've made a couple of land bridges you can see here, these little archways where you fly through at quite high speed, in fact. It's a lot higher speed than I thought at first. And you can see here, I kind of sculpted it first, and then I went back and made it look a little bit nicer afterwards. So yeah, this is me tidying it all up. All the little scars in the landscape there as well. It's all getting tidied. It's all looking lovely. So I still haven't come up with a definite storyline for this set of rides yet. Scarab, there isn't really going to be a storyline. You just, Scarab. That's all you need to know. But Antony and Cleopatra, I haven't quite decided on which part of their history I'm going to focus on. Because I think at one point they were sort of not at war, but they didn't really tolerate each other very much. And then there was one point where they were lovers. So it's a question of which part of that do I actually focus on. And at this point, I have no idea. But my very limited knowledge of Antony and Cleopatra, I know there's a snake involved somewhere. I think Cleopatra committed suicide by getting a snake to bite her, something like that. So I kind of wanted to go with more of a snake type theme for Cleopatra. Antony, I'm not so sure yet. But that's why I called that little section under the station, I referred to it as the snake pit, because we're basically going to fill it with snakes. And again, the snakes, I think it's asps. I think it was an asp that bit her. But I think I've gone for cobras. I think cobras were already in the game. It's part of the adventure pack. So those animatronic snakes, the couple that are on branches, and then the small and the large variant. Those are the ones I've gone with. You can see I'm just doing some terrain painting here, a little bit more sculpting here. It's kind of like the second half of Montu with these corkscrews. I really wanted you to get close to the ground and feel like you're going to hit it. There's a bit of an homage to Nemesis as well, which is my personal favourite, B&M invert. I always get sad when I see Reddit threads where people are asking about their favourite inverts, and Nemesis just doesn't seem to get the mentions that I think it deserves. I think part of the problem of that is it's a lot of Americans that comment on these polls, and a lot of them haven't been to Europe, haven't been to Alton Towers, haven't been on Nemesis, which is, fine. And that's why I almost feel like these polls are kind of redundant. I have strong opinions when it comes to coaster credits as well. The validity of coaster credits. I think it's an arbitrary number that really means nothing at the end of the day. That's my personal opinion. I mean, my credit count is low, and I don't really care that it's low, because I would rather go back and ride the coasters that I've been on because I know I like them all, than go chasing after a number that really only one person in the world cares about, and even then I don't particularly care about it enough to make it a thing. But yeah, these are me practicing placing snakes. I wanted to go for like a surprise factor. So as you dive down towards the ground, you suddenly realise there's a huge number of snakes below you. And I struggled a little bit, I'll be honest, I struggled a little bit placing these down. This one here is a bit too big. It kind of kept sticking into the ground. But then the small one, it's almost too small. You don't really notice it much. So in the end, I think I've gone with a mixture of both. But the first thing I did was add some rock work underneath. This is me just checking some clearances here. And again, it looks like the train gets very close to the ground and very close to the wall here. But when I actually paused it, there's a lot of clearance. The guide I used was those two supports from the station above that you can see. I used that as a guide. And if the train fits through that gap, then it can pretty much fit through any of the wall gaps that I've created. Oh yeah, this is me just continuing to experiment with snakes. At this point I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with them. So I started placing down like that one there on the branch, and then there's another one that I place on the left hand side, which you really don't see because you're swinging in the opposite direction at this point. But yeah, I was just playing around, seeing what it looks like, seeing if I can get a little fear factor going on. I wouldn't recommend this part of the ride to those who are afraid of snakes, because there's a lot of snakes. There are a lot of snakes. And then yeah, I'm going through the little rocks here. This is where I land on the type of rock that I want. And I start at this end and start working back. This is when I realised that actually I probably should move the snakes out of the way, put the rocks in, and then put the snakes back in. So in a second you'll see me delete the snakes and then come back and redo it. This is probably the most detailed section of the ride in terms of overall theming. The rest of the ride is pretty much basic at the moment. I do add one more snake towards the end on the second corkscrew. I create like a little land shelf and put a snake on it. And again, these rocks, it looks like there isn't that much land clearance. It looks like, you know, foot chopper, but here's me checking. There's enough of a gap for me. There's enough of a gap. I'd like to think that the crash dummies that are used are the ride envelope. I'm trying to think of the right word, like the upper limit, worst case scenario. And the fact that these dummies seem to ride through pretty much a-okay makes me think that when actual people come and ride the ride, they'll also be able to get through a-okay. There's a couple of rocks like these two here that I just placed. I felt like those maybe were encroaching a little bit on the rock work that we've on the coaster envelope. But again, I've tested it from different angles multiple times now, and it seems to be okay. It does seem to be okay. So as long as it seems to be okay, I'll do another check when there's actually people on board. When that's going to be, I don't know right now. But I will do another check, and if it's looking bad then yeah, I'll go back and change this. And again, worst case scenarios, I'll just select all the rocks here and lower them down slightly. Keep the configuration and everything like that, but just create a little bit more space. It's really interesting. I was watching a behind the scenes of Vampire at Chesington, and I kind of knew a little bit of trivia about it, but I wasn't that clued in. For those of you that don't know, Vampire, when it first opened, was an aerodynamic swinging coaster, suspended coaster, that's the right word. And then I think that opened in 1990, and then in 2001 it closed for a year whilst they replaced the trains. And instead of going with aerodynamic style suspended trains, they replaced them with Vekoma trains, flawless trains as well. And what I didn't know was the Vekoma trains are actually slightly taller than the Arrow trains, so they had to go through the entire ride, the entire profile of the ride, and they had to dig down into the ground to allow the new trains to get through without any issue. And there's one section of Vampire where it drops down into a tunnel, and the whole of the base of that tunnel was filled with concrete, and they actually had to drill like a ditch into the concrete for the new trains to be able to get through. And even now, that concrete that they dug out is still in the tunnel. So there's like gravel on the floor, and every week they shift the gravel out to the side to check that the concrete is still, the concrete that remains is still, it's not got any cracks in it, it's still structurally sound. And then they scoop all the gravel back in again. And it's little things like that you don't really think about. I always thought the new Vekoma trains were smaller than the old Arrow trains, but it's the other way around. They're certainly taller. And they were even talking about things like the guide wheels, or the guide rails for the wheels. They were trying to put those in the top of the train when they redid it, and then they found out they couldn't, so they had to put it in the bottom, like with Arrow, and that's why the new ride vehicles are taller than the old ones. It's kind of cool. It's an old video now. I think it's like 6-7 years old now, so some of the trivia might not be that true, but it's worth checking out. I think if you just type in Vampire at Chesington, it's one of the first like 5 or 6 results that come up. It's a behind the scenes tour. I think it was Coaster Force that did it, but don't quote me on that. But yeah, I'm taking all this info on board now when I'm looking at these buildings and these rides and this theming and things like that. Because sometimes no detail is as much detail as you need. And a couple of times in the past, I've tried to get this gateway to integrate into the Cobra roll for Anthony. I'm still going to try. I also tried putting it here at the entrance to the Batwing for Cleopatra, but there isn't enough space. I think what I could do is take these towers and just spread them out a little bit more and extend the bridgeway between them, and then there would be enough space. But I went with something a little bit different for this section, because the gift shop is just to the left, and I've built an archway from the gift shop over the first drop of Cleopatra. So I think I might do the same over the Batwing. I did do some Googling as well for Egyptian architecture, and particularly ancient Egyptian architecture. It is a lot of kind of plain walls with maybe a ridge running down the side, some pillars on the corners, and maybe a statue or two standing out the front. And that's basically it. Beyond that, there isn't huge amounts of detailing. So for me, it's win-win. You know, it's the lazy man's job, as it were. But especially as I'm trying to go for realism with this park, so being able to do that is awesome. And then, yeah, this gift shop. The reason I looked up the architecture was because I felt this gift shop looked a little bit plain when I finished building it. But then when I went on Google and actually checked, I feel a lot better about it now. So you'll see me building it here. This is ASP's Antiquities. I hate the word ASP. It's really hard to say for some reason. So there's a few souvenir shops. There's Just a Memento. Is it Hats Fantastic and Looney Balloons? I can't remember what the names of all the businesses in this game, which is not very good. So there's 2 of Just a Memento, and I think there's 2 of Hats Fantastic, and then I think there's 1 of the balloons, and there's also a staff building and a toilet in the back. This probably won't be the main staff building of the area, but it probably will serve as the staff building for those who work in the shop. I'll set up a little zone here for those who work in the shop so they can go take their breaks without having to stroll halfway across the park. I'm kind of going to start focusing a little bit more on the management side of the game now as well. The management side isn't that deep. A lot of people describe it as shallow. I think that's a fair statement to make, in all honesty. But I mean, I don't play this for the management side of it. I play it for the sandbox. The management is a nice little add-on. So little things like staff rooms, keeping your staff happy. I'm happy to go along with that idea. Might not be the most fun thing in the world, but again, it's realistic, and that's all I really want from these games is realism. So as I say, I'm happy to go along with all that. Yeah, I had a little change of heart. I wanted to make the store a little bit bigger. It kind of felt too small for me, so I had to do a lot of rejigging with the path. The path is now flush to the ground through most of this store section, whereas it was slightly elevated before. I had to rebuild the entrance to the store, and also the exit to the 2 coasters had to be changed slightly as well to fit in. But I'm quite happy with the result. This isn't it. I think that's more like it. And then here's me building the new entrance there as well. I think I have to drop the building height down slightly to make it match. Oh no, I know what I do. Yeah, I do. I lower it down a little bit, and then I do a little bit of terraforming as well to make it match. It looks a lot nicer now. There we go. And then I link it all up, and then I rebuild the pathway underneath like so. So the stores are now, there's some at the back right hand side, and they're mainly for people that have just come off the coaster. It's like the on-ride photo section and things like that would be over here if this was a real building. And then there are some at the front left hand side as well. And they're mainly going to be for people who have come in from the main section of this Valley of the Nile and just want to look at souvenirs. I'll put an information stall down there as well in case people want to buy priority passes for another ride on the 2 B&Ms. And then this is the little walkway to the staff room and the toilets. I said this a couple of episodes ago. I want there to be more buildings in this area, even if they're not used for anything practical, just to have it there as theming. So this little bit here happened to be practical because there's a staff room and there's a toilet, and it's all very nice and very lovely. But there will be other sections, like the 2 archways over the coaster track. They don't really serve any purpose other than, you know, theming. You know, there's no one's going to be walking over the bridges or anything like that. It is pure thematic purposes only. And I built some nice little arches there as well. Try and hide the staff bit as much as possible because, you don't really want people seeing into the staff only area, because in real life you wouldn't have any theming in that section or anything like that anyway. So you want to try and make it look just nice enough, but not too nice. But then again, you kind of want to treat your staff okay. It's a bit up in the air, should we say? It's a bit up in the air. And this is me placing the other two stalls. So there's a support structure from the first drop that kind of gets lost when I build the stalls. When I managed to find a way to fit both stalls in so it works. I'm still not that happy. The pathing system isn't really something that's bothered me. I found a way around it. But trying to get stalls to line up with the path, like you saw there, I couldn't get it. It was either too high or slightly too low. And even here, trying to get this floor piece in, I wish it was possible to just replace the pathway with a floor type. But alas, no. You have to do it like this. So there's like a tiny step, which means I like to try and make my parks accessible to all. And there's this like lip, and you enter the store, which means anyone who is impaired when it comes to walking, if you're in a wheelchair or if you use a walking stick or crutches, you wouldn't be able to really get into this store. And normally, like, the exit is the all accessible entrance to the rides. So I mean, I try and make my queue lines accessible to all, so I kind of get around it that way. But you wouldn't be able to use the exit to get on the ride here, because you wouldn't be able to use your wheelchair. Plus, it's quite a steep ramp as well, so that's another factor. Particularly going down into the store, it's quite steep. But yep, this is me finishing off this little bit of the build. I'm trying to find something that I can put on the top of that tower. The other thing you've got to remember, of course, is a lot of this is going to be in the dark, because it's going to be a nighttime scenario. So I'm not too worried about it right now. As long as the bits that should be seen are relatively well lit, then I'm not too fussed about how the rest of it looks. Because it's ASUS Antiques, the name actually came after I added this little piece. Originally I was going to add this piece somewhere on the coaster track itself, somewhere on Cleopatra. Then I thought, actually, it'd look really nice on the gift shop. And then because I added it on the gift shop, I then thought, I can actually name this part ASUS Antiques. I've still got to come up with a name for the restaurant. I'm just going to look and see, because I thought I had a Google Doc somewhere with all of this saved in. I probably do, but it's been a while since I looked at it. So it's got things like the names of the stores, the restaurants, the rides, what type of ride each one is, little things like that. You have to excuse me as well, I've got a frog in the throat for some reason. Oh, there we go, I found it. Somerset Hills ride names. So we are in the Valley of the Nile. So Cleopatra, we've got. Antony's not actually on this list, I'll have to add that. Then there's an Enterprise ride called Eye of Ra, we'll have to add that in somewhere. And then we've got Scarab of Giza, which is the spinning coaster, although I think I'm just going to change that to Scarab. And then we've got the Sphinx, which is the name of the restaurant. I'd like to try and get like a Sphinx type statue outside, but we'll have to see. So this is me adding some foliage now. The little rose ivy type thing, I quite like that. These trees as well look quite nice. I might replace like this little bit here with the trees. I might just put some buildings here instead. The top of Scarab needs to be a building of some kind, or a hill of some kind, although it's going to have to be a building, I think, because it's too close to the Batwing of Cleopatra. So there'll be like a nice little near-miss element there. And I'm putting a nice little tree there as well as the centerpiece of the entrance to the two coasters. Some little trees under here as well, make it all look very nice, very lovely. I'm a bit miffed that there aren't any bushes for this type of... like, it's all just trees, which makes life a little bit challenging, especially here, because I'm trying to get a tree between the loop of Cleopatra and the 0G roll of Antony. And I just couldn't find anything. Even when I sort of adjusted its angle a little bit more, I couldn't really find anything that fitted. So that was slightly annoying. But what can you do? C'est la vie. And then yeah, just doing some more clearance checks. I wanted to rebuild the exit to Cleopatra as well, so that it actually goes through that little doorway rather than just randomly through the wall. So a nice little rejig here. There we go. I put a little support piece back in underneath there as well. There's me checking. And I did a couple more clearance checks here. It is starting to look a lot nicer now. I do still need to decorate the bridge, the exit bridge for both coasters. I'm trying to think of a way of doing that. I might have to rebuild it slightly. or I could just go with it and leave it as is. But yeah, that's the end of the video, guys. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, and of course if you enjoyed the series. Drop some comments down below with ideas for future episodes. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button. If you have already subscribed to the channel, thank you guys for your continued support, and until next time, I will see you soon.